So we'll continue our discussion on sorting in this final class, and then we'll wrap up the course. We looked at comparison-based sorts, and those were like bubble sort, insertion sort, selection sort, etc., which were looking at the value as a black box. But now we are going to go inside the value, look at bit pattern, digit pattern, and so on, and see if we can do some sort of different way where we don't really compare the elements as such, or might not compare it the way we were comparing in the comparison based sort. So one of the ways in which that can be done is using bucket sort to motivate bucket sort, and how natural it can be for even kids. I'm showing this picture. That is my son. And in the physical world, when we used to have those answer sheets after quiz 1, quiz 2, etc., we used to sit for days together with the scripts and evaluate those. And then he used to feel very interested that, oh, can he help, right? So we have forbidden him from helping in the evaluation. But we used to tell him, seek his help in making the answer sheets in a sorted manner at the end of evaluation, right? Assuming that this, even with the non-core course, but more so with the core course where the number of sheets used to be large. So, and we didn't tell him how to do. And the method that he devised was very similar to what we do in bucket sort. So what he did was, roll numbers 1 to 10 he put on one side, then 11 to 20 whenever they are coming he put those into a different side, and so on. So that is how he kept creating buckets, right? So typically there would be 6-7 buckets required, and he could create buckets. Individually the buckets are unsorted. Inside the bucket the scripts are unsorted based on the roll number. So you would take one bucket and sort those 10 scripts, and then second bucket sort those 10 scripts, and so on. And the buckets are anyway sorted. So once individual buckets are sorted, then you go over the buckets in a particular order, lower to higher, and then get the final sorted order, right? So that essentially is a bucket sort. So let's understand that in this discussion. So if you look at, when you are trying to push a particular answer script inside a bucket, essentially we are doing some sort of an indexing. That indexing you can view as a hashing technique, where your bucket number is dependent on your roll number, right? So that is where the bit pattern or the digit pattern that is inside the value starts coming into picture, right? And we sort each bucket. Individually sorting a bucket, which is going to be typically of a much smaller size, depending upon the number of buckets, is going to be relatively easy. And for that processing, you can use an existing comparison-based sort, for example, insertion sort, or even bubble sort for that matter, because the number of answer scripts is going to be small. And output the buckets in increasing order, and that gives you the total order, total sort on all the scripts, right? So yeah, when the number of buckets is greater than or equal to maximum element value, that can also be handled easily in this case. However, one important part here is that each element that you want to put into the sorting using this bucket sort method, that should be comparable type. Comparable in the sense, it should be possible to hash it. It should be possible to index it. And that might not always be possible directly for arbitrary types. But in some cases, what you can do is take the type, map it to an integer, and then hash that integer, right? So essentially, that is what we did with respect to the roll number, where we said that a roll number is an arbitrary string, but then we take the last 3 digits of that, and then we sort it based on that, and so on, right? So that essentially is bucket sort. The second method, which is a non-comparison based sort. Any questions on bucket sort, by the way? Okay. So second method, which is a non-comparison based method, is a counting sort. Now, what does that mean? Essentially, that means that you are going to hash it using some sort of an identity function, right? So if I tell you that, okay, if I have, let's say, n numbers, right? Let's say 1 to 1000. Some arbitrary numbers are there, right? And those need to be sorted. One of the ways in which that can be done is that you create a hash table of size 1000, and whenever you encounter an element, you put it into that particular, or you set the bit to 1. I mean, initially the hash table is initialized to 0, and you just increment it to 1, right? Whenever you encounter that element. And then you make a final pass. So you made one pass over all the elements, n elements, and you incremented the bits to 1 at certain locations in the hash table, right? Use only identity function as the hash function. So if the element is I, I'm incrementing array of I. Then I make a pass over the whole array and I get a sorted order. That essentially is something which is very similar to this counting sort, right? So the algorithm that I just explained, doesn't that look like you can do it in linear time? Any suggestions on that? So does that mean that non-counting based method we might be able to do in linear time? Okay, I'll explain the algorithm again. Okay, Aniruddha says yes, order of n. Okay, where n is the number of elements. The algorithm is that you are given n numbers, you create a large array, and you just set a of I equal to 1, where I is the number that you are looking at. And in the end, you go over this array and just output the elements wherever there is 1. Vasu says it is order of max element rather than order of n. Any other suggestions? Okay, so indeed it is order of max element. So your array size is actually dependent on the value that it takes, right? All our comparison based methods did not care about what the value is. It was a black box. I just discussed about the n elements. We didn't talk about what is the value taken by it. But now in non-comparison based methods, this value is now going to come into picture. Whether it is 3-digit number or whether it is 7-digit number, that is going to start coming into picture in these algorithms. Okay, so therefore in this case, not only the storage space is order max element, but also the processing needs to be order of max element, because I'm going to go over the whole array wherever there is 1, right? So therefore it doesn't turn out to be order of number of elements. Okay, so that is one way. So when somebody says that, oh, I have a sorting method in order n time, you have to be careful about what that n is. N could be the max value. If it turns out that, well, these are going to be in some sense ordered elements, right? Ordered meaning consecutive elements, let's say students in a class. Then you can say that n is of the order of max value also, right? It's almost the same. But when it is not, when these are arbitrary elements, then you have to be careful about what that is. Okay, so that is one way. That is also called as a counting sort. But there is a little bit of difference. There is a different way of doing this as well. Sai Chan says, what about repetitions? Good question. Anybody wants to convey that? What you can do when there are repetitions? So let's say that the elements are appearing multiple number of times. What will you do? Yeah, Aniruddha is saying increase count. So you essentially keep a counter rather than a bit in each element of this array, and you go on incrementing it. And the counter is going to tell you how many times that element appears. So you just output. Is that okay? Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's okay. So yeah, another way is using something called as a prefix sum. What does prefix sum mean? It just says that you are given an array of some numbers, and at location I, prefix of that I is going to be 0 to I minus 1 elements. Prefix of an element I is going to be the elements which are formed using 0 to I minus 1 elements, and therefore prefix sum is the sum of previous previous elements of I, right? So 0 to I minus 1, that is the I number of elements, that their sum is called as a prefix sum. Okay, so for 0th element, 0 is the prefix sum. For index 1 element, the element 0 is going to be the prefix sum. For element number 2, sum of 0 and 1th elements is going to be the prefix sum, and so on. Okay, so let's see how we can use that. So what we do is we essentially bucketize elements using an identity function. So imagine that you are given the original array of this elements, this set of elements, and you can see that there are some repetitions. 1 is repeated, 4 is repeated, and so on. And then some elements are not present. So this is going to be essentially the buckets. And so 1 gets hashed here, 3 will get hashed here, and so on. So that is using an identity function. And I think there is a small mistake here, because this 7 is, it should not appear here, it should appear at index number 7, and so on. The holes are probably wrongly kept, but I suppose you are able to see that. So this information I don't have right now. I will get this information. So this is the kind of output that I expect out of my processing of prefix sum. Okay, so what I do is I go over this set of elements and then increment the counter in each location. So 1 appears twice. So whenever I go to 4 and increment this value. I think this is 1 based. So I increment this number. Then I go to 1. I increment this number from 0 to 1. Then I go to 4. I increment this number to 2. 9 increment the number to, I think, 1. 11, I don't know if it is there. Maybe I should have had one more number. But anyway, so you increment it to 1 and so on. Right? And when 1 appears again, you increment this to 2, and that becomes its final value, and so on. So these become the bucket size. There is a small mistake here, but I suppose you are able to get the idea. So we get these counters, which are essentially bucket sizes. How many buckets we have? Equal to the maximum value in the elements, right? So how do you find the maximum value? Well, that can be done using one pass. So that is okay. Order n is the complexity of finding the maximum. So once we have this, we increment this and we get some counters. From these counters, you can do a prefix sum. What is the prefix sum of this? We say that for 2, it is the sum of all the previous elements. There are no previous elements, therefore the sum is 0. For 0, the sum is the sum of all the elements is the prefix sum. So that becomes 2. For 1, the sum of 2 and 0 is 2. For 3, the sum of 2, 0, 1 is here, and so on. Right? For 1, it is going to be all of these 4 numbers, which is going to be 6, and so on. So that is how we compute a prefix sum, which can be done again as a linear pass. Linear pass in terms of the size of the array. Once we have obtained this, what do these numbers give you? Well, these numbers not only give you the prefix sum, but that prefix sum is indicating something. What is that? That is the final position, final starting position of that particular element, right, in the array. That means that 1 should start at offset 0, right, and 2 should start at offset 2, and therefore sorry, yeah, 2 should start at offset 2, 3 should start at offset 2 again, right? And therefore the diff between these consecutive elements is going to tell you how many elements are existing. Recall our compressed pass-through storage like a format, right? So where we had the degrees specifying, or the offset specifying the consecutive offsets difference was telling us what is the degree of that particular element, right? So in a similar manner, the diff tells us how many times the element appears, which means that since this is 1 based, 1 is appearing at offset 0, and there are 2 minus 0 number of ones, and therefore you output 1 twice. 2 starts at offset 2, and that is this one. Yeah, this part is 0 based, and 3 also starts at offset 2, and therefore the number of 2's is the difference of these two, which is going to be 0, so you don't output 2. The difference of these two is 1, and therefore 3 appears exactly once. The difference between these two is 3, and therefore 4 appears 3 number of times. And that is how you go from prefix sum. And the bucket number, essentially this is indexed as 1, this is indexed as 2, 3. So that is the number which we need to output. So that is what we get by this prefix sum, right? In the same array, you will be able to do this counting sort. All right. Any questions on this counting sort? Okay, I'll just quickly summarize. First part was do a hashing, use identity function, create a large array, and push the elements into individual buckets as a of I equal to I, or a of I plus plus, right? And then we make a pass and output the elements in that, and that becomes a sorted order. That is one way. The second way is that we do a of I plus plus, so we get the counters. We do a prefix sum on these, which gives us the starting offset of each element, and the diff of the consecutive prefix sum values is going to tell us how many elements exist, right, in the same array. So we just go to first entry, find the counter, the index is 1, I mean that is indexed as 1, so therefore we output 1 those many number of times, then 2 0 number of times, 3 1 number of times, and so on. So multiple passes are required, but these are constant number of passes over this array. But remember that the array size is not order n. The array size is order max n. Okay. So any further questions on this one? All right. So the final sort that we are going to study is called as a radix sort. The radix sort has been quite useful in many applications, and not only related to numerics, but also in the context of, let's say, dictionaries, where there are character sequences which might get used. Radix sort also has a nice parallelism, right? And therefore it gets used also in parallel processing. Mayank is saying sorted array can also be formed using bucket size. Yes, the hope, okay, I'll go back to this. Yes, from the bucket size, you will be able to get the sorted array, right? So that is what we essentially did in our first part, where we did not use prefix sum, right? So from 2 itself, you will be able to print 1 twice, print 2 0 number of times, print 3 1 number of times, and so on. That is what we did in the previous method. And using prefix sum also you will be able to do. So is there any advantage of doing additionally prefix sum? Yeah, I'm not able to see any over the method that we just discussed, which was only using bucket sizes, right? Yeah. In general, prefix sum can be useful for other occasions, but yeah, I'm not able to see why we should be doing specifically prefix sum. Well, I think what is possible, Basu, is that we can use the bucket size array itself to actually output the elements also. So I can go on. Will that be possible? Yeah, I think that will be possible, right? So we print 1 here and here. Take out the next element. Right? And then we print 0 number of times 2, and then we take out the next element and we print 3 ones. Take out the next element. Will we be able to do? Okay, I think that is, yeah, you're right. So yeah, I think that won't be possible. We'll have to, yeah, we'll end up overwriting the values. Okay, so that seems to be one definite advantage, that we might be able to do it in situ with prefix sum, whereas for the hashing or the indexing that we discussed, that will require extra memory. That seems to be reasonable. Anybody has any other suggestions about this? Yeah, thanks, Basu. All right, so we'll move ahead from here. So radix sort, I was saying, is also useful in multiple applications, and especially in the parallel processing, this turns out to be a very useful sorting mechanism. Let's understand that a little bit. So we saw bucket sort, right? So 1 to 10 numbers in one bucket, 11 to 20 in another, and so on. So the radix sort is kind of a generalization of radix sort, and it does look at the different digits, right? So there we were doing indexing. We are also doing indexing here, but indexing we are doing starting at different digits. Okay, so in this case we are going to have some 10 buckets, and each bucket is going to be indexed using the digit 0 to 9, and depending upon the digit we are looking at, the elements keep moving across buckets, and the hope is that in the end we get appropriate elements in appropriate buckets. You sweep through these buckets and you get the sorted order, and individually within the bucket also we need to maintain a sorted order, right? So that is the hope. So let's focus on this. It's a little complicated because there are some counterintuitive steps in this, but hopefully we'll be able to do it properly. So let's understand that with an example. So let's say that you are given these numbers, right? Anybody sees anything interesting with these numbers? Right, so these are cubes, and right, so as Anirudh, Abhishek and Suryanarayan have suggested, these are all cubes, and interestingly their units places, right, which we will see in the first iteration, turn out to be from 0 to 9. Okay, so what we are going to do is that in the first iteration we are just going to look at the least significant digit, which is marked as red or brown, and therefore I'm going to push these elements into their appropriate buckets, right? This is not sorted, definitely, but this is sorted if you look at only the least significant digit. Okay, so let's say that is iteration number 1. In the iteration number 2, we are going to look at 2 least significant digits, and we are going to index the 10th place, that is the second digit from right, and move the elements accordingly. What that means is that 10th place digit for 0 and 1 is 0, and therefore 1 will move here, 0th bucket. Similarly, the 10th place is 1, and therefore 512 will move to bucket number 1, 343 will move to bucket number 4, and so on. Okay, so let's do that in the second iteration. So 0, 0, 0, 1 and 0, 8, these have come here, and what we have to maintain is a sorted order within the bucket. Right? So when you are inserting, you have to insert it in a sorted order, not according to the whole number, only according to the digits that you have seen. And therefore you can see that 512 appears before 216 because 12 is smaller than 16. We are in second iteration, and therefore we can afford to look at only 2 digits. Okay, all others seem to be kind of hidden or blinded. Similarly, 125 appears before 27, which appears before 729, and so on. Okay, any questions on the second step? Okay, so once we have the second step done, what will you do in the third step? Can somebody tell me how the elements will be in the third iteration? Yes, we have to look at the first 3 digits. That is correct. Yeah, I mean, in this case, first 3 digits are going to be last 3 digits also. So, but yeah, that's correct. Last 3. Saichan is saying, why are we doing this? Yeah, I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Abhishek Kumar says all 2-digit numbers in zero bucket. Correct. That is correct. So which means that 000108 followed by 27 and then 64 are going to be in zeroth bucket. Okay. So the idea is, Sai Charan, is that when you are looking at the numbers from right to left, you sort 1-digit numbers. Then you sort all 2-digit numbers, keeping 1-digit numbers sorted. And then the most significant digit is going to distribute elements, and you sort based on the third digit and so on. Right? So that is the expectation. Murari says these are in bucket 0, then 125, 216, 343, 512, 17. Yes, it will be sorted according to this, but these are all, I mean, assuming that that pipe indicates different bucket, these are not going to be in the same bucket. Right? So 125 will be in the bucket number 1, 216 in bucket number 2, 343 in bucket number 3, 512 in bucket number 5, 729 in bucket number 7. Right? So that is, I hope that is what you intended to say via this. Right? So let's agree with Murari that the numbers are going to come like this. Now when I do a sweep through all of this, from left to right, I'm going to get elements in the sorted order because the number of digits is going to be 3. Therefore, I require 3 such phases, 3 such iterations, which means that the complexity is kind of dependent on the number of digits that appear in the number. And therefore, the non-comparison based sorts are going to have some sort of dependence on the value that it takes. Okay. Okay, so any questions on this? Otherwise, I'll ask you to do some classwork. Don't think that because this is the last class, I'll not ask you to do a classwork. Okay, so let's do that for this one. How is this better than the other methods? So it turns out that you can perform this processing to some extent in parallel. That is one aspect of it. So you can just take one number and put it into a bucket. There is some synchronization required in the buckets because you might be moving multiple elements to the same bucket. But overall, the amount of parallelism you can gain out of this can be as large as number of elements. Right? Rather, so contrast it with prefix sum, which is a very sequential process. That also can be parallelized to some extent, but not as much as this one. Right? So therefore, this has a parallelism advantage. The second aspect of this is that the amount of memory that you require is proportional to the number of elements. You don't require it based on the max size. The processing is based on the max size rather than the storage requirement. So assuming that you will have probably millions of elements, you don't want to, you want to store all these million elements anyway. So therefore you will require that much memory, but you don't want it to be dependent on the maximum value that it takes. So therefore this method turns out to be better than. And since the processing is more, you can parallelize it. If the storage space is more, you can't compress it always. Right? So that is the problem. Okay. So what are the values after the first iteration? And you can use pipe to separate out the buckets. You can show with 9 pipes What are the 10 bucket values after first iteration? Oh, I missed one comment. Murari has said it's like hierarchical clustering. That's a good observation. Yeah, to some extent, this is like hierarchical clustering where you start from some elements, then you merge two elements into the cluster. So individual elements are their own clusters. Then you merge two elements depending upon how close they are into one another cluster. And you go on building this tree, and finally you get this hierarchical decomposition where you get the cluster at the root. But the small problem here is that in hierarchical clustering, typically once an element is part of a cluster, it continues to remain so. Whereas here the elements are actually jumping across. But yeah, for one step, you can think about it as one iteration, you can think about it as hierarchical clustering. Sure. Okay, so Murari has given 432 and 2232 are going to appear together. That is correct. Plus 4. Yeah, okay. Then 33, 453 and 1023 in that order. That is very important that it should appear in that order. Then 124 and 225. Okay, so that sounds good. Yeah, Basu has also given the same. Mayank has also given the same. Okay, Sai Charan also says the same. Okay, fine, good. Now what happens in the second iteration? First iteration is relatively straightforward. In that sense, you just look at the first element, but the second iteration will require you to look at the second one and might move elements across. So, I mean, yeah, it will also be similar. We will do second iteration, then I'll leave the next two iterations. So here we'll require 4 iterations. I'll leave the rest of it for you to try out. So in this case, it turns out that we'll have to use bucket number 0 also, not only bucket number 1. Well, actually, that was required in last example also. Okay, fine. That is fine. Okay. So, what are the states of the buckets after the second iteration? Okay, Ashwin says 1023, 124. 220 in the second bucket. Okay, fine. And then 432, 2232, 33 in the third bucket, and 453 in the fifth bucket. Okay. Sai Chan says, wouldn't it make more sense to start with the most significant digit instead of the least significant? You can try it out. And that is actually many times the way we look at it, right? I mean, manually. It turns out that it's not possible to be done that way. That's a good question, and you should try to do that. The reason why that is not possible is the movement should happen. I mean, the importance should be given to the final decision-making entity should be the most significant digit, right? And therefore, that decision should happen in the end. If it happens first itself, then the element will move across based on the units place. So you will give importance to the units place rather than the most significant digit. So you can try that out, and it will, I mean, it will sort it in the reverse order, right? So that is to say that if you reverse the number and do this on most significant digit, then that is what you will, then you will get the correct order. But yeah, so that is what will happen. Murari also says the same. You can avoid a lot of moving numbers around. If we go from higher to lower, no. I mean, we should first get the correctness, then we'll worry about performance. And if this is not all elements will have the same number of digits, yes, that's correct. No, not only that. Even if they are of the same number of digits, you cannot go from most to least, because you want to move the elements based on a particular digit. right? So for example, if you just take 12 and 13, they both will appear in bucket number 1 initially if you go from left to right, and then 12 will move to something, and then 13 will move. Okay, this part seems to be okay. Maybe we'll take 19 and 12, right? So 12 and 9, not 12 and 19. 12, 22 and 19, right? So I'll just write that down. 12, 22 and 19, right? So these are the three numbers. So initially 12 and 19 appear in the bucket, and then 22 appears in the second bucket, right? So that is what happens. Now when we look at the second digit, what we will do is that we'll say that first bucket doesn't have anything, then second bucket contains 12, 22, and then after a lot of buckets we'll say 90, right? So that doesn't give us the information, right? Individual bucket can still be sorted, that is okay, but across buckets we won't get that. That is only going to happen when you go from right to left. Okay, Sai Charan says, okay, Murari says after last return all elements will be sorted in bucket 1. No, that will not happen. Then you are not looking at the other digits, you are not moving the elements. Oh, I see. So you are saying don't move the elements at all once they go into a particular bucket. I don't know if that can be called as a radix sort then. If the element goes to its final bucket just by looking at the most significant digit, yeah, I'm not sure. I think I'll have to think about this. I am not able to see exactly how the complexity guarantees will come into picture here. Maybe it will work because that is how we naturally think about that. Okay, I'm going to take the elements with the largest number of digits, put them as the highest numbers. I'll take care of sorting them. Then you take the next smaller number of digits and put them into another bucket. Yeah, that should be all right. That should be all right. That is not, yeah, that is definitely not radix sort, but yeah, so you are saying that it will reduce the number of the amount of movement that we are doing. That seems to be reasonable. I'll have to think. I am not able to see what are the issues with this, but I think that that will work. So what you guys are suggesting, I think that will work. Yeah, that should be workable, I think. Yeah. Sai Charan says, I feel like comparing the least significant digits doesn't really say anything about the order in which they should appear. It's only the last iteration that's going to matter. No, it's not that way. I'll also tell you that the sorting within the bucket is also important. And one guarantee that the radix sort gives is that the smaller element, I mean, across iterations, not within the same iteration, but across iterations, if you are going from left to right, the smaller element is always going to appear first and then the larger element, and therefore you can afford to move the elements only later. I mean, append the elements into a bucket, right? So for example, 0001 and 08 might appear in some order if they are appearing in the same iteration, but actually if you are going from left to right, they will still appear in the sorted order, right? Now when you get, so you cannot get anything which is going to be smaller than these ones, right? So whenever a new element comes into bucket number 0, that is always going to be larger than these elements, right? So that is a guarantee, and therefore you can afford to have some sort of a list and append it in order one time inside the bucket and maintain this sorted order within the bucket. That is one large guarantee that radix sort gives. That we'll have to see. That's why I was saying that the complexity guarantee we'll have to see with respect to. I think correctness wise, you should be able to get that to work, whatever you guys are suggesting. The complexity is something which we'll have to worry about. Yeah, so it's not only the recall that. Yeah, so we don't have to insert anything in between, right? So that is one big advantage of radix sort that I didn't mention as an invariant, but yes, that is an invariant that gets maintained in this. So you can possibly say that to some extent. For example, in the zeroth bucket, those 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 8, I mean 1, 0, 1 and 8 got inserted, and those got inserted. I mean, in this case, it so happened that in the same iteration, they got inserted in the correct order. I don't know if that is also guaranteed, but across iterations, whenever a new element comes, right, that is why that element didn't appear in the second iteration is because it had a larger element right there, more than 0, and therefore it didn't appear in that iteration. And if even within that iteration, if it has to appear, for example 27 versus 64, since you are going from left to right, 27 will always come first and then 64, because 27 was in bucket number 2, 64 was in bucket number 6. So that is one advantage. The other advantage, if there would have been, let's say, some other number, let's say 1064, right, that would have appeared here, but then that would move to bucket number 1 only later, after you have looked at 125, for example, right? So that becomes another, not 125, maybe 125 or something. Yeah. Any other concerns, questions here? I'll show you the complexity. I think it turns out to be this way, where the number of iterations starts mattering, the number of elements start mattering, because that, I mean, in the worst case, all the elements can come to the same bucket, right? So that is possible, but typically, I mean, this works with duplicates also, but typically, assuming that there are unique elements, you will have a good distribution based on the digits, and of course the number of buckets. In this case, the number of buckets is going to be bounded by 10, but you might be able to do better. For example, you might be able to look at 2 digits at a time, and then you can have 100 buckets, right? So 00 to 99. You might be able to think about that as a number, right? Therefore, you can increase the number of buckets. If you are thinking about hexadecimal values, you will be able to talk about, let's say, 16 buckets, like that. So this is very basic that we have looked at, but there are more complications that you can add, increase the number of, because 10 buckets is really a very small number. For millions of nodes, you require more number of buckets. P is the number of iterations, like the number of rows in our processing. We require 3, which depends upon essentially the number of digits, but not always that is the case, because you might consider more number of digits in one iteration. So essentially the number of passes is going to be dependent on that value. Any other concerns, questions? All right. So that kind of completes our discussion in this course. What we have looked at in this programming and data structures course is we started with arrays. We looked at sorting in the end, then the linked list. We also looked at some of the applications of these. Like for arrays, we discussed some problems. For linked lists, we looked at stacks and queues, where we took, let's say, postfix evaluation, expression evaluation, etc. For queues, we did call center simulation. Then we looked at nonlinear data structures like trees and hash tables and graphs, where we looked at binary trees, binary search trees, AVL trees, the splay trees. Then we looked at priority queues and also some of the applications of these. For example, we discussed, at least in operating systems, we have these different elements which get inserted and so on. We looked at hash table, we looked at different techniques in hash tables, linear probing, quadratic probing, etc. And then we looked at graphs. Some applications of graphs we did. For example, the graph representation was one, but then the application was more on related to doing a breadth first traversal, depth first traversal, then doing Euler tours, finding cycles, etc. So this is what we kind of covered in this course. And yeah, data structures, algorithms, and programs. So this in several applications, what we have is arrays, right, and matrices. In many of the applications that you will do, if you are working with, let's say, scientific computing or even machine learning based codes, etc., most of the data is going to remain static. Whereas many of the data structures that we designed in this course, there the data was dynamic, and therefore we required link structures, and all this malloc, new, etc., came into picture, where you were inserting and removing elements at arbitrary times. And the algorithm is going to be decided, as well as the associated data structure is going to be decided by the properties of the problem. So we have to first understand the problem and then design the algorithm corresponding to it. Sometimes there could be multiple algorithms for the same problem. And the same algorithm can also be implemented using multiple data structures, right? So there is a hierarchy, there is a problem, there are multiple algorithms possible, and for each algorithm, there could be multiple data structures possible. But the combination of algorithm and data structure is going to decide how the overall complexity, absolute running time is going to be. And I hope that to some extent, the fear of pointers, the fear of using arbitrary structures, etc., that went away because of this course. And you'll be able to think of, okay, let me show me your data, show me what needs to be done, and I'll be able to design a good data structure out of it. Right? So that was the high level idea behind this course. This was our initial slide, right? So from the computer science perspective, we looked at CS 1100, then discrete maths tells you about proofs and counting. Then there is computation theory, theory of computation, then architecture related digital world, right? Switching theory or digital foundations of computer system design, as well as architecture comes into picture. And then CS 2700 is about the efficient implementation of algorithms, right? But primarily focusing on the data structures part. The algorithms part happens actually in the next semester, and I'm sure some of you are contacting the instructor to check if you can enroll into the course, although officially DCC has not permitted to consider this as a prerequisite in absence of 2710. And then there are other core courses in computer science, paradigms of programming, compiler design, as well as operating systems. So these also require efficient implementation of these data structures, which will be considered as black box. Okay, you require a queue here, you require an AVL tree here, and so on. So that those will be viewed as a black box in the future courses, in case you are interested in a minor in computing or minor in AIML, which is offered by the CS department. And we also looked at the relevance with an example, right? So if you recall this cab booking app, PDS said that how to keep track of the cabs such that a passenger can query the nearest cabs efficiently. I hope you will be able to now think of good data structures where you can maintain this information, where new cabs are getting added and some cabs are getting removed. And there were other examples of PDS which you can think about, and you should go through these now to see if you are able to now think of data structures to maintain this information in an efficient way. Right, so we were, this kind of completes all our discussion, and yeah, so what will we use this for characters? How will we use this for characters? So it turns out that the characters themselves can be considered as some sort of index, right? So A to Z can be used as 1 to 26, and you want to sort for the dictionary purpose. So you might be able to go from left to right in this case, because the dictionary is going to be sorted from left to right. So you can sort based on the most significant character, then the second most significant, and so on. So that is how you can use the 26 buckets to sort the characters. Okay. Any other concerns, questions? All right. So I'm thankful to all of you that you sustained through the course. I think this will be a good time to switch on your videos, whosoever can, and we'll try to take at least one or more pictures. You should also be able to take it. Let me close the presentation. Okay, currently I am the only one having Video on. Request. Okay, thanks, Murari. You look good. There's a lot of cold, looks like. Hi, Anish. Hi, Abhishek. Hi, Basu. Hi, Mayank. Good to see your faces. I mean, I have been interacting with you guys. Hi, Anirudh. But I didn't know how you look like. So, some of you are smart. Hi, Chotu. Hi, Sai Charan. Hi, Sunil. Hi, Silar. Hi, Dilip. Hi, Anish. Hi, Santosh. Sriram. Varshit. Hemant. Shreyas. Durvasula. Great. So I'm seeing some faces. Some of you are taking time. Maybe you are coming to a more presentable state. Uh, but thanks for switching on your videos. I'll wait for a few more seconds and then we all can take pictures. Wow, the class looks awesome. I mean, I feel like at least on the last day, I am able to witness the class to some extent in person, and hopefully the classes will begin in person. I don't know. The next semester seems to be still online. That's what Dean said. Let's see. Okay, so I will take some pictures now. You should also take some pictures. Say cheese or say PDS, whatever you want to say. I think there is a second page also. How do I go to the second page of students? Because this is the only maximum that I can see. Great. So thanks a lot for joining this course. I enjoyed teaching this course, and as you know that it was a little, I mean, this is the first time we offered this course for non-CS students, and the department allowed me to teach this course. So thanks to the department and thanks to all the TAs for doing your assignments, resolving your queries, etc. And don't think that the course is over. Your final exam is still pending. Right, so we'll meet on that day, and hopefully everything will be fine. All right. Anybody wants to convey anything? Feel free. Anything which can be improved, anything which went well. Yeah, maybe everything was ideal. Nothing could be improved.
We could not have taken this course if we had to do CS, the discrete maths.
Yeah, maybe everything was ideal. Nothing could be improved.
Discrete maths we had to take and then take, so we directly got this. So yeah.
Sure. Yeah, Vikash is saying, can this be, hopefully this continues for next batches. I think that will depend upon if there is another taker for this course next time, or if I am allowed to take this course next time also. Let's see how it goes. All right, so we'll stop here. Sorry for delaying by 4 minutes in the last lecture, but hopefully you will forgive me for that. All right, see you, enjoy, bye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you. Sure.
Thank you, sir.
See you, Sai.